Hello, and welcome back to another riveting episode of Off the Shelf. You guys are going to have to let us know how you feel about these. Like, how do you like the format? Do you like how we're talking about it? That kind of thing. Is there anything different you'd want from us in book reviews? Because honestly, we're kind of considering changing up this series a little bit, and we record these so far in advance that I felt the need to kind of drop this in now, in this episode. But this week, I made Knick-Knack read I Hear the Sunspot, Volume 1, by Yuki Fumino. And I actually picked this up recently on vacation. I didn't know what it was about, but I've heard a lot about it. It's been recommended to me on several different manga lists. And so I thought I'd pick it up, read it, and see what it's all about. So the story is about a person with a hearing disability named Kohei, who often has trouble in school and such. This entire story takes place on a college campus, basically. But he has trouble in school because he has a hearing disability, and so he stays away from people very often. And in the book, that leads to a lot of people having kind of like bad opinions about him, or they say things about him behind his back because they don't really know. So he meets this other guy named T.H.E, who's really outspoken and cheerful and loud, and he's kind of the first person to not blame Kohei for his hearing loss, or pity him for it, or treat him really differently, and he kind of pokes his way through all of Kohei's defenses and walls to try to become friends. And then, obviously, spoiler alert for this book, but this is, I believe, a yaoi series. It's not currently explicit as far as I'm aware, but it does contain the two of them in a relationship moving forward away from book one. My associate will now slide in. That was great. 10 out of 10. We're doing that every time. So, Knick-Knack, how did you feel about I Hear the Sunspot?
I mean, it was alright. My face is covered by this mic.
Push the mic.
Look, Mom, I'm in the commercial.
Just fucking there.
So, yeah, I didn't mind it. It wasn't. I don't want to say it wasn't terrible because that makes it sound far worse than I thought it was. I thought it was pretty good. I think if I had any issues with it, there might have been some pacing issues around the middle where it feels like there's a part in there specifically, and we're spoiling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part in there specifically where it's like this girl likes the guy who's deaf kind of superficially, but his friend, I forget his name, it's been a little bit, is like, you only like him superficially, you're kind of a terrible person.
Well, and I did fuck up. When I gave you the book, I told you this was a self-contained book. It was just one volume. And I was incorrect. It is actually part of a series, and I was not aware of that when I first read it. So.
Yeah, but as a result, as I'm reading this, it felt like it was spinning its wheels a little bit at that, and it felt a little too drawn out for the length it was supposed to be. Now, as a single episode, I guess, if you're looking at this as an episodic thing and there's multiple books, then it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. It's just another plot point that I'm sure will eventually fold back in later. But yeah, just as I was reading this, I was under the impression it was more standalone than it was. It did feel a little bit off to read.
I have to say, having read further into the series, while I think that the romantic relationship between them is very cute, I also think it's highly unnecessary to the plot. I find that them becoming friends is a far more meaningful relationship than them ending up as lovers. Like, I find them creating like a lasting friendship based on the fact that T.H.E doesn't care about Kohei's disability and is willing to do whatever he needs to work around it, to be far more heartwarming than a normal person just falling in love with a deaf person or someone with a hearing disability, because he's not entirely deaf, who just hasn't had that sort of friendship before.
I kind of gotta agree on that. I feel like I've seen the same, not the exact same story, but, similar types of story in hetero fiction.
Yeah, it's not to say it's bad, and
No,
I definitely I mean, I've been recommended this to me on several LGBTQ plus manga lists, and it's true that Japan has a pretty interesting culture when it comes to LGBTQ plus manga and anime. And I think that in that respect, this is a really good manga because it's not over-sexualized, it's not a hentai, it's not an ecchi, it's not an eroge. It's just kind of a normal story about college students, and it's very realistic in terms of relationship pacing and the way that they actually act around one another. And I don't want to say that the romance makes it bad, because I don't think it does. And I certainly think that it being a gay romance does make it one of the first of that particular genre I've read that isn't overly stereotyped and tropey.
Yeah.
Like it strays very far from a lot of what they consider gay stereotypes in Japan, which I think makes it a really good work for the LGBTQ plus manga community. But I also genuinely think that it would have been just as good if it had just been a heartfelt friendship that would have lasted forever.
Yeah, I think maybe it feels like kind of a halfway step to someone in the West or in the North America, United States. Trying to say United States, not saying United States. Because, like, even at the back of the book, they don't really commit to the romance aspect. Like, more than friends, less than lovers. And I'm like, okay, if you're going the romance route, just go the romance route.
Yeah.
Just say it. But also, that might just be more the culture it's being released in.
And in fact, I do believe I've actually read a one-shot that was actually a one-shot about a person with no hearing disability and someone with a hearing disability who was entirely deaf that was a gay romance. And it was a self-contained in one volume. I'll find the name of it and put it on screen. And it was really good. And it went, like, through the romance and really sunk into it. I think in that respect, I can maybe see that obviously Japan is still pretty conservative about publishing LGBTQ plus works. And there are certain works that are more acceptable than others, and this kind of toes the line, I think. Because it seems to be somewhat acceptable for just blatant, outrageous hentai, but it becomes a lot more unacceptable when it's in the context of, like, a genuine, down-to-earth, wholesome, could actually happen in real-life story. You know what I mean?
A little bit. Again, I don't want to make too many assumptions on Japanese culture since we're not there. But
yeah, at least from the manga that we get in the U.S.
Yeah,
they're well known.
From the Western perspective here.
From the West looking in, I also will say, and this is just a generalization based on what I have read, but it seems to me that, at least as far as I'm aware, lesbian romances are more accepted.
Well, that's just a thing worldwide, really.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but...
Yeah, so I think it's a good book. I don't know if I will keep reading it. I don't know if I will go on from volume 1. I certainly won't be buying any more in paper. I may read them online at some point and do an update video on how I feel about it when I finished it or when I'm further in, but for now, it's good. But it didn't really hook my interest like some of the other books I picked up on vacation and some of the other things I'd rather have you read.
Yeah, I think I have that same opinion, generally. It's good. It's a good story. But I don't know if I'd say much more than that.
Yeah. Well, so let us know how you feel about our format, whether or not you'd prefer something a little more structured.
Give me advice on my slides.
Maybe you think you'd prefer just one of us reviewing the books and not two people talking about them. Let us know, because we're curious as to what you guys like. So, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.